Good afternoon. Good to see you all. I'm gonna pull my chair up here a minute. Good to see everybody. I'm sorry we're starting just a few minutes late. We're trying to get in as many meetings dealing with appropriations as we can right now. Just discussions. Y'all know that. I know we have already spoken with Chris Wells, with Director Wells in our office and some of his staff. But today I wanted to give you a chance to just to talk to us, to update the board. And I know we may have some people joining us too online. It looks like several that were away from the Capitol this afternoon, but I will call our meeting to order first of all. And just thank everybody for pausing. I know there's some meetings. I know Representative Oliver has to leave us in a little bit for another meeting, but we're going to begin this discussion. So, Director Wells, if you would give us an update. Looks like you're all teed up and ready to go.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, subcommittee. Just wanted to kind of go over a quick update for GVRA. One of the things I just wanted to touch base on is one of the biggest things that came out of our first year was establishing agency pillars. And so you'll see on our first slide, I believe it'll be slide number 3 in your packet, or slide number 3, it just shows our agency pillars. This came about of having some really good conversations at the stakeholder summit with quite a few of our stakeholders who was interested in what we're doing. And so our agency pillars just basically spells TEACH, which is designed to say transparency, empowerment, accountability, compassion, and honesty. And we've adopted those particular pillars because they go both ways: how we treat our staff, how we treat our employees, as well as how we treat our clients. Our next slide is just a quick update of historical expenditures over time for individuals that have seen the agency or just now getting familiar with GVRA. Over the last couple of years, you've seen kind of the impact of the COVID, with 2019 being one of the highest years where we had some services. So you see that direct correlation between where we were prior to the pandemic and where we are right now. The blue line is our state funds, which we can match. And then our orange reddish line is our total fund. So that's going to include state, federal, and other. Our next slide just gives us a breakdown of how we ended the year and how the agency is composed. We're about 53% personal services. That's going to give you about 990 employees across the entire state. Grants and benefits is pretty much 2 driving factors. That's going to be our vocational rehabilitation service contracts and benefits, as well as our SSI and Ssdi adjudication services with the disability or SSA. Our next slide just gives you kind of a view of how those funds were and how we ended last year. So we had a budget of approximately 146 that we came in with. We spent about 143. And so the difference there is some other funds that we were allowed to carry over, some grants, some agreements that has allowed us to kind of carry those funds over into the current year. But as you can see there, we maximize our budget to the max this past year. Our next slide, and you probably hear a lot of this from various agencies, is this is our our head count. This is a point in time. So every 6:30, we just look at where we are. And this kind of gives you a correlation of the size of the agency, especially over the last 3 years and over the last 3 fiscal years. What's taking place there is COVID. Also, you may have read the Great Resignation. We're no different than any other agency. We have some downward pressures. And then this is also a little bit of the Accenture report recommendations that were put in place from a couple of years ago. And so those 3 factors are contributing to a reduction in the number of employees that we have. Just a quick slide on how our fund sources are broken out. We're 14% state funds. And again, this is slide. We're 14% state funded, about 78% federal funded, and that federal funds, again, that's going to be our federal 110 or our matching, and our disability adjudication services, which makes up the 2 biggest programs in the agency. And then just wanted to give the subcommittee an update on where we are right now. So as of 10/31, this is kind of how our budget breaks out. At the end of October, you typically want to be about 33%. As you can see in our total expenditures, we're right about 40%. We're not alarmed at this particular point in time because we're seeing some good things in our VRK services, object class 321. And that's showing, which the data that we'll show a little bit later on is showing that individuals are seeking more services. We're getting individuals through the application process. And so we're starting to see spending tick up a little bit compared to where we were last year and keeping track with previous years. We do have some encumbrances that we encumber at the beginning of the year, like rent, real estate, and some of the other areas. And so we're working on that. I think we had a question.
Let me get mine first. This is, I think, new. It's a little different screen or whatever. Chairman Oliver.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but because I had to leave.
Nope.
How much were you appropriated last year for new car purchases? I'm trying to figure out why you'd be buying a car when people are working at home.
Very good question. So what we're doing is we eliminated 5 offices. One of the biggest barriers for our staff and our clients is the barriers to transportation. So we were forcing our clients to come into the office in the middle of COVID. So we thought with us closing offices, with offices being closed, we adopted a virtual platform. But for those individuals that are not good with technology, we needed additional vehicles in the field to go out. We were spending more money in mileage reimbursements for our particular staff. And so we made the analysis and looked at it and worked with OPB and made the case that it's actually cheaper for us to purchase vehicles because we need to go to our clients.
How many vehicles do you have?
Currently in the agency, we have 9 vehicles across 36 field offices. So if individuals need to go out, those vehicles are pretty much used. Our district managers cover up to 20 to 30 counties and
So
multiple offices.
477,000, that's how many new cars? That's about 9 new cars.
So that it is actually 25 new cars. So we had an opportunity with some federal carryover funds that we needed to expend. So we received some federal permission to move forward and purchase vehicles.
And I'm assuming, and you don't have to answer this, but I'm assuming that every office in every state agency right now is reevaluating their rental offices.
Again, I didn't hear you.
Or reevaluating the rental offices. Every agency is going to have to do that. So Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me interrupt. I am always questioning cars, as you know.
Right. Thank you so much. And we'll miss you. I understand that some of your questions and concerns may be with us, or we'll address them later as well. Thank you, Chairman Oliver. Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Our next slide just gives us some updates on our agency timelines. November, we're hiring counselors. Right now, we have 20 job announcements that just closed. And so we're trying to hire more counselors to get more individuals through the door. Our SSA partners at the feds have allowed us to hire 55 new adjudicators. So we're hiring more adjudicators. In December of this year, John Bone and our external affairs team is working on centralizing and finishing that part of it. I spoke on that my first year, and so we're working to get that complete. We're looking at updating our website. A lot of people has told us our website doesn't provide enough information and is very wordy, so we're just streamlining that. Again, we're expecting the vehicles to come in. Again, we're seeing an uptick of services. Part of the vehicle purchases is that with only 36 offices and 180 counties, individuals are stretched across multiple counties to come in our office to serve. And so we're trying to meet individuals where they are at local libraries to mitigate that barrier that we're seeing our clients have. We're looking at a professional development initiative in January, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The sub-appropriations and also the General Assembly was gracious enough to provide us with some one-time funding and amended for online virtual, and we'll talk about that. We have an update on that, and we expect to go live towards mid-January. We're looking to hire support positions, and then we're doing a residential services review so we can figure out how much, so we can expand our capacity with our youth and potential students with disabilities in order to serve those individuals that's seeking services. In February, we're doing a laptop refresh. One of the things that we uncovered during the middle of the pandemic is when there was a push to go virtual, we're not part of the GETS environment. And so we have to purchase our laptops. And so every 3 years, we see an uptick in expenses every 3 years. And so what we're trying to do is keep a consistent budget. And so we're using the model that most agencies use with their RICO printers with our statewide contract to move towards leasing our laptops. So we have a consistent and constant spend. Back in 2020, when the doors closed for the most part, and individuals went home, a lot of our staff were stuck with laptops that are 6, 7, 8 years old that's not able to take on the current infrastructure that we have right now. And then as you can see, we're looking at evaluating telework in the future as well. One of the biggest initiatives that we have that we uncovered in order to help our clients is we have an individual that passed a few years back, as you can see there, and her trust was set up. And so GVRA receives a little bit of a trust in order to provide services for individuals with disabilities. And so we reached out to the trust and we asked that trust, is it okay if we develop a training initiative for our staff in order to help assist them become better CRCs, become better counselors in order to serve our clients? And so we've established, using state board rule, a professional development initiative that's fully funded out of this particular trust with permission of the trust to provide more opportunities for our staff to advance and grow. Our next slide, just some bullet points to try to get through fairly quickly. You may be aware we closed our priority categories in January of 2020, and that has helped us kind of stabilize the agency. At that time, we had approximately 690 individuals at that time that was on the waiting list. And so it is a give and take. There's more people that has been added. But at this moment, when I pulled the data as of yesterday, we only have 214 individuals on the waiting list. And as you can see, is even as times has been tough, we found ways to maximize and leverage the existing funds that we have to ensure those individuals that are on the waiting list are also being served. We expect to be able to get through the remaining 214 by January to be able to kind of clear that, but that would still leave the categories closed. Because looking at the numbers, it does show that we are serving a little bit more. And so part of closing the categories was making sure we had enough budget capacity to serve all individuals that were walking through the door. A couple areas that we just wanted to point out is we expanded our policy unit for quality assurance. And that unit actually helps our training unit that we created to be able to provide more resources to our counselors as well as our staff and provide more training. We had created a data analytics team with existing funds to be able to analyze and provide resources and information when it's requested of individuals that are asking, you know, in terms of how GVRA is moving. And then we have established with existing capacity 6 transition supervisors. One of the critiques that we've received is not having consistent contacts from our school system and those individuals that are working transition cases or in the youth area. And so we've established specialty transition positions in order to allow a point of contact in every single district for those individuals that are working with our students. Our next slide just gives you an idea of just quick, some efficiency metrics. 2021 was, again, that was one of the toughest years there. And so what this slide kind of shows is just the average caseload for some of our staff. It shows eligibility, which is how quickly or how many eligibility determinations we're making. And so 2021, when you look at the data, there was a drop, and this kind of explains why we were able to absorb some of the reductions over the last couple of years. But the numbers that we're seeing now more reflect 2019, but just wanted to give everybody an example of what happened in this past year. Our next slide, this just shows the number of clients that we serve and then the number of services that are provided to the number of clients. And so that blue graph kind of shows that we were uptick up until 2019, and coming into 20, we were actually doing pretty good as well. But when COVID hit over the last couple of years, again, there was a decline. But again, we're ramping up because we're seeing services starting to resemble where we were in the past. And so again, that's where we were this past year. And then this next slide just gives you another example of just, you know, where we were and some of the trends that we're trying to change. And so again, we didn't include the FY 2022 because we're still validating, but in the initial quarter, we've seen more plans and more applications in the first quarter than we've seen at this time last year.
Can you say that again? More plans?
Yes, so that's, yes, ma'am. So more, so basically applications. So applications is letting us know people are coming in. So the first quarter, and I can actually give you that data in our PDF I have with you before we leave, but there's more plans that we're developing and we're seeing more applications in this first quarter when compared to the first quarter of last year. And I can provide you that data.
So when we're looking at this trend that line is showing that's downward with everything down,
Yes, ma'am.
you're actually saying now.
Yes, ma'am.
Not on the trend line, but it's showing that your statistics are showing that you're, okay.
Yeah, we're increasing. We didn't want to include it on the slide because we wanted to validate and verify it's clean data coming straight out of the quarter. And so Jonathan, our director of administration, is working behind the scenes to make sure that that trend is accurate. But from everything that we're seeing and our data team and working with our field staff, we are seeing an uptick in all these categories across the board. And again, we'll provide you that information and that data after the meeting. And then this gives a really good idea of kind of over the years, what's been going on and why we've established the professional development initiative. And that's why we're able to recruit the 40 counselors. We're trying to get back to 2019. So the thought process is we have a capacity to recruit 20 counselors and we're going to try to recruit 20 more starting mid-December. But again, the projections are based on the needs that we're seeing. And I'll show you on the next slide how we project out our needs based on caseload size.
Okay.
And so our next slide, again, this is our data. So we did a little research and we had a couple conversations with our partners at the federal level, as well as throughout our RSA partners and VR partners to try to figure out what is the magic number for the number of cases that a counselor should be able to carry and still have quality. And so we established what our baseline should be based on the research. We looked at our current cases, which you see there. We looked at how many we needed and then how many were filled. And then that's kind of how we came up with our metrics for how many we should be recruiting for. And that's by case type. So our general cases is your average Joe that's walking into a VR office. Our transition caseload is typically your youth or your students, those individuals that are seeking higher education or opportunities there. And then we have blind and low vision. That's a specialty caseload, deaf and hard of hearing, as well as our DD and mental health caseload. So we have our cases broken out so we can make sure that based on the type of cases and the amount of effort that will be required, that we're able to still be able to push quality, but also push, fast services as well. So this is how we came up with what we need in the field. And then this is an update on the funding that was provided. This is just a screen capture of the appropriations that was provided and amended and kind of where we are, but this is kind of what our website would look like. It would be an online referral, which we're moving to the 21st century. Any job that you go into now these days, you have to be online and you have to be able to apply. And so we thought this would be the perfect opportunity. If our background is employment and services, is let's start from the beginning. If we're teaching individuals how to apply, we're trying to find opportunities, why not start with the referral process? And so this is just a quick example of what we would be asking for, the information that we would typically do on paper. And this kind of goes back to why we're investing in a mobile fleet or a virtual fleet, because a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing is going to be virtual. However, we're going to have individuals in areas that may not have bandwidth, that may not have internet, that we're going to have to meet them where they are. And so that's why we're making the decision to invest not only in our virtual platforms, but also our mobile platforms. Our next slide, this is what John is working on related to our website. So we're trying to streamline our website a little bit more and provide more information. So these are just some screen captures of our test website that we're working with. We're bringing outside individuals in as well. Again, the example is we're trying to streamline, reduce the number of words that are on our websites and make it a little bit more interactive. And then our next slide, just a couple of examples, and I'll try to get through these fairly quickly. We're trying to streamline our approach as well. One of the critiques we came into the agency is from our provider team that talked about the number of providers, our ability to get through and being able to streamline our process for our counselors. And so you'll see in 2018, we had about 305 different providers that were out in the field. And so when we started to look at the data, the biggest complaints were that we would bring our providers in and say, we're going to provide you services, but then we wouldn't do referrals. They wouldn't be used. And so we're taking the approach, we would rather have quality of our providers instead of quantity, because it makes both sides a little upset if you have 305 individuals, but on average, you're only using 100 of those providers. And so what we're working to do is streamline, and it actually makes it easier for our counselors, because now when our counselors look into a service that's required for our staff, they're not looking at 305 different providers that's offering different types of services. We're shrinking the number so they can go in and be able to really pick a provider fairly quickly. And we think this is going to help us help our providers, the ones that are doing really good services. And then we're doing a new provider service. We're doing job placement. I had a quick conversation before the meeting about how do we take advantage of the market and provide more services for the individuals we serve. We're actually experimenting with a job placement, just like we do temp services with our standard job. We're going to go the temp route and see if we can get some of our specialty temp agencies to help us place our clients after they've gone through VR services. And so that's going to be another service that we're providing. And then we're looking at just provider directory, and that provider directory is, again, it's going to be designed to say, here's all our providers, this is all the services, and we'll be able to provide those to our clients so they can have informed consent. So these are some of the improvements we're making to streamline. Our next one, this is just a quick update. We have 13 current students at our Cave Springs campus. We have a graduation expected for Thursday, December the 9th, and we're expecting to have 25 starting in January. RWS, which is our second residential facility, we have 65 current students right now. We expect to have graduation in December 16th. And then because we're pushing capacity in January, we're expecting to get up to 131 students. Our next slide, this is a quick update on our SSI and Ssdi program, basically our partnership with SSA. We had 88,712 total cases. So even when, individuals were looking for opportunities to telework, we were still getting our SSI and Ssdi claims processed, which we want to thank that particular team. We actually were able to hire 76 new employees through our SSA grant, and that's 100% federal funds. So we've been trying to ramp up with personnel to be able to get those services out to our particular clients. And then our business enterprise program, Jonathan, you may have to confirm this, but I believe this was during the CRP was the first time that the business enterprise program received funding through federal channels or something like that. And so what we're seeing is with that 702, which was appropriated to Georgia, 190,000 of that has been disseminated to our vendors. You may be aware our vendor program, they sit in our federal cafeterias. They could be vending machines on our roadways. And so when things shut down, people stopped traveling, that impacted our 57 vendors. And so the feds came in and basically to offset that revenue loss based on the funding formula, they gave Georgia $702,000, which is on average, how much per vendor? Do you remember? And it varies in terms of how much each one is going to receive. Thank you, Jonathan. And then we'll conclude with Georgia Industries for the Blind. This is probably one of the toughest conversations to have. Georgia Industries for the Blind is our manufacturing facility in Bainbridge, Georgia, where we have approximately 50 individuals that are blind and low vision. We also have the Griffin location, and then we have a location with Warner Robins, an agreement with Dobbins Air Force, with the Air Force Base. And so you can see over the past 9-8 years there that our revenue has been declining. And so what happened in my first year is we had our plant manager retire, we had our program director retire, we had our number 3 retire, and we had our number 4. So our succession plan at a 1, 2, 3, 4 retired, and then we started to have issues on the supply chain. And so our manufacturing team has suffered from the same supply chain issues that you see, where we have the orders, we have the equipment, we have the information, but it's been just hard related to some of our biggest revenue. So we do file folders. And so our file folders makes up about 73% of our revenue. And so what's happened is the actual material that's used to make those file folders is some of the same material that's used to make gowns. And so when DuPont and the team was making that, they moved everything to PPE. And so we didn't have the materials or some of the material to be able to make the file folders, which resulted in, supply chain issues and contributing to the reduction in the revenue there. But what we're doing to try to fix that is part of what you do is look for creative opportunities, fix the issues, and then after you try to squeeze as much blood out of that turnip as you let individuals know what's happening, what's going on. So some of the things that we are doing is we are actually using the Griffin location as storage. So that location about 5 years ago, they moved a lot of the operations out. And so we still have that facility. So we're leveraging federal dollars and equipment from the BEP program that we were actually paying, close to $100,000, I believe, in storage in one of our private units, that we're actually redirecting those funds and storing that same equipment in our state-owned facility. And because it's owned by GIB, it's allowing us to redirect those funds from our private storage facility to our state storage facility, which results in revenue without having to do it nothing but point the direction there. So that was created. We're doing shredding services because we're going to virtual, because we're closing offices and we deal with vital records. We do pay for shredding services, but because there's so much information that we're working to pick up and shred our own documents. And so that's creating a revenue source for our GIB and creating revenue. And it also gives us an opportunity to experiment whether this could be a potential another product line. We did a visit to the Alabama Industries for the Blind which, in Talladega to get some ideas and some examples of what they're doing to be successful. Because individuals are aware that we're in the mask machine making business, we actually had a nonprofit and I drove up to the nonprofit in Asheville, North Carolina this past Thursday on Veterans Day. And we actually received a mask machine and materials to make 1 million masks. And so based on how much we sell those masks for GIB, that could potentially result in about $300,000 in mask sales. And so that donation is going to go a long ways. And our team worked hard to get in contact with that team. And all they ask is I come up there, look at it. And if I want it, they would ship it. We would just cover shipping costs. And so now this would be our second mask machine. During the same time, we got an email from our federal partners that is asking for agencies that are associated with the National Industries for the Blind, which we're affiliate of, if they can make masks. And so now we're going to have 2 fully functional mask machines. We're going to be applying for that particular grant. We are the only NIB affiliate that can make masks from my understanding. And so if we get on the federal registry, which we're aiming for, we would have the opportunity to be the sole provider for masks for our federal partners that's seeking mask opportunities. So we're excited about that and expanding that opportunity. That concludes our presentation. I know it's a lot, but I yield to the Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great. We know you're working hard and we know these challenges are very challenging. Without a doubt. And I think we may have some questions. I'm not sure. I asked Representative Buckner to join us too, because although Cave Spring is not in my district, it's right next door and she has Roosevelt Warm Springs and a great amount of history there involved. So are there any questions from any of the members at this time at all? Okay, so Chairman Hogan.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is a big improvement over what we saw last time. What is the starting salary of vocational rehabilitation counselor today?
So right now the starting salary is $35,839. That's just straight salary. That's a counselor 1. We try to hire in at the counselor 2, which is they have to have their CRC or certified rehabilitation certificate. That's 38,926. And so if you have a specialty caseload, that's a 5% increase over the base. But right now we're trying to bring in counselors at 38,926. And we're seeing individuals apply. But I think one of the common refrains from that is because we require a master's degree as well as that certificate, that it does create a competitive disadvantage when we're seeking, quality individuals that are seeking to work with our individuals with disabilities.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, yes, please.
What does a master's degree need to be in?
There's a plethora. It can be special education, it can be rehabilitation, it can be school counseling. It's quite psychology, sociology. There's about 15 or 16, it's about 5 to 10 different degrees that we pursue. This was a change over a couple years ago. A couple years ago, we were allowing individuals, I hate to say it, like myself, with a math background in and asking them to work with our individuals with disabilities. And that's kind of resulted in the service level over the last few years not being where it was. It's hard to train individuals like myself that comes in with a math degree and has the expectations that I need to be working with someone, with a disability and understanding what some of those nuances are. And so my predecessors changed that requirement. They moved to a master's and they moved to a minimum requirement for those individuals that has a degree in the field that we need them to be in, and which is special education and some of those other fields.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an honor for me to participate, so I appreciate you. I was looking at the charts that you provided us, and on page 11, it
Yes.
shows that we are decreasing the number of providers from 300 to much fewer. And I just want to hold that thought. And then on page 8, we are seeing a significant drop in the number of people, if I read this right, that are either eligible or applicants into vocational rehab. But I still get complaints or comments from people all over the state saying that there's a backlog and that it takes a very long time to get into the system. And my question is, do we have a handle to go from 16,000 in 2012 to 3,000 plus in 2021 is a significant drop. Those people went somewhere. Are they using private providers instead of vocational rehab? And well, I'll let you answer that.
So let me make sure, which slide? I want to make sure.
Page 8 and 11, I was looking at the change in the number of providers that you have your field services or client or counselors using. I'm wondering if they're going there instead of coming to us, just bypassing us because we take too long to process them.
Part of that is what's happening, what's going on. I think the slide that you're referencing in the number of providers, we did have quite a few providers that didn't survive the COVID situation. And so we did see a drop off there. Part of this is we instituted an audit group and we found that we had some providers that weren't in the best interest for our particular clients. And so that audit has found us to try to streamline some of our approaches because those were some of the complaints that we were receiving. I think we were also receiving the complaint as well, is that when you have 305 providers and you are trying to please everyone, that you please no one. And so it's almost like having 10 pieces of candy and 10 and 20 people to feed. You have to kind of split it up and nobody's happy. But if you reduce that to 5, everybody gets at least a couple pieces of candy. And so part of this was by design. So it's a little mix of everything related to this. This is actually a really good thing because our providers that have been part of GVRA, they're still there. What we're seeing is in this past year, to go to, I think, your second question about where the client's going, is the clients that we've lost because they haven't applied for the services itself. So when you see that drop, it's not because they went to a private provider, because all of our providers that we have are technically they're nonprofit entities that we can serve. We just haven't been providing them the services or the actual clients, because it goes back to your third point, is that the process has been cumbersome. I wish I could put a cherry on top to say that that's not the case, but the complaint is valid. And I think that goes to why we're trying to develop the website to streamline it. That's why we're trying to reduce the number and type of documents that are cumbersome for our staff. And the conversation that we've been having with our providers is that as we streamline and as we reduce, we'll see more and more referrals, because that's where the key is getting those referrals in, getting them processed fairly quickly, and getting them to our providers that have stuck with us during this time. So everything you're saying is valid. The complaint is valid. Yes, we're trying to streamline with our virtual, and that's why we're trying to hire more counselors. The number of providers that you see are declining. That's valid. But again, that's kind of a few things that's happening there that's contributing to that reduction in providers.
May I ask one more? Thank you. I have also heard that there is a pretty significant turnover rate for some of those field services people that process the applications. What is that turnover rate, and is that also affecting us being able to deal with the backlog?
So I can get you what the turnover rate is on that. As you can see, with us losing almost 200 individuals over the course, pay has been a big function. You mentioned about those individuals that does that processing. When I came into the agency, those individuals are making about $22,000 a year. So when you're asking individuals to, that's below the poverty rate. I mean, that's basically what it is. I mean, that's all I can say with that. Yes, it does contribute, but I think it's more pay in this environment where now individuals can go to, Burger King, they can go to a restaurant, they can go to Amazon and make $18 an hour. I mean, that's almost a, $14,000 pay increase, in less than a 48-hour period. But we're seeing that's been the biggest contributor to that turnover. But the turnover is high, but it's more contributed to the pay based on our exit interviews.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or questions online with anyone that's joining us there? Are you seeing anything? No. Okay. Well, I want to take a moment here while we've got a little bit of time and try to understand and have a conversation about the different priority categories. If you could just expand on that a little bit, and
Okay.
the situation there right now, what determines that need?
So with priority categories, and I wish I had Ms. Jennifer Howe with me, and Jonathan, I may need some help, but we have 3 priority categories that when individuals come in, they get, they're determined, and then they are placed in 3 different categories. One is most significant disability. And so that could be a number of disabilities, but again, it's going to be based on that individual client. Then you have priority category 2, and those are individuals with a disability that's not debilitating, but it's a disability that could be a barrier to employment. And then we have a 3rd category, which is category 3. And this could be a disability where it doesn't limit an individual's ability to work and be independent, but it could be a slight barrier. And so some of them overlap based on the level of the specific disability. So I didn't want to get in terms of what specific disability an individual has to have to enter into those categories. There's various factors. And so once those individuals are determined based on their records, based on what they want to do and going through the VR process, they're placed in either 1, 2, and 3 based on federal statute and federal law. Is we have to have categories, so we have to serve by that. And when we decide to close categories, we must serve those individuals in category 1, which is those individuals that are deemed most significantly in need of our services and our help. So what we did in January of 2020 is, because we were in the middle of a reorg, because we were in the middle of a pandemic, and because we were in the middle of budget cuts at that particular time, we asked the feds if it was okay if we could close from priority categories. We did close those priority categories, but we left priority category 1 open. So we can still serve those individuals that are coming into the office. So they come in, They're determined. Once they're determined, we assign them a category. If they're assigned to category 1, they're served. We'll continue to serve them. We continue to use, they continue to use our services. If they're in category 2 or 3, we put them on the waiting list. In July of this particular past year, when we made a couple key, give Jonathan and the financial team credit on this, they found a way to maximize our funds, and they did a really good job. And in finding a way to maximize our state funds to the max and eliminate a lot of some spending in certain areas, we reached out to the feds and asked if we could start serving individuals without open priority categories, because our projections were still showing if we were to serve individuals out of all 3 categories, we would probably run out of funding. And so we didn't want to take that chance. But they did allow us to essentially say we can start serving individuals on those categories. So we still have to serve category 1 individuals. Then we can start serving category 2. And that's why we started to pull people off. So even though we had people on category 2, we were still able to slowly pull them off. And then after we get through with category 2, we basically analyze our budget. If we have room, we start pulling more individuals off. And so that's kind of how those priority categories work. And that's kind of how our process is working behind the scenes. And we were able to bring back 3 retirees that wanted to come back. So even though we have people leaving, we have quite a few individuals that are seeing some of the changes that we're making that want to come back and be a part of it. And so they're actually helping us serve some of our clients that are on that waiting list to allow our staff that's in the field to serve those individuals that are walking in the door.
Okay, that's good. So just to make sure that I have it clear, category 1 is the most severe. So
Most-
that's what the federal government says you have to address, even if you can't do the others.
Yes, ma'am.
And 2 is disability with some barriers, 3 with fewer barriers. In other
Basically.
words. Yeah, okay. Okay, so, well, let me stay on this just a minute and then I'll get back. I know we have another member that wants to ask a question. But along with that, so when do you project, understanding what the budget may be
Mhm.
moving forward, that you might can open up 2 more or 3 or totally open up all categories?
We're looking at opening up, potentially looking at category 2. I think our fear is, and that's why Jonathan is working so closely with the projections and looking at it from a first quarter perspective, is we think we can serve out of category 2 based on what our projections are showing. Our concern is sustaining that. So that is the issue of being able to sustain that. And so we do have some numbers that we're throwing around. And I think that's why this first quarter has been very interesting to see that we're getting back to 2019. And I can easily say, well, 2019, based on the count of services from 2019, I can tell you that that's $39 million, which would be $16 million more than what we're budgeted for right now, just based on the count of services. But this first quarter, after we've gotten more data and more information, it's kind of showing that the number could be potentially right around that. And so we're looking at it a little bit more closely to be able to ensure, but we think we can do it based on our ability to maximize the funding that we currently have. The issue is that we won't be able to sustain it. So that would be category 2, because that's our second largest category. Category 3, that is going to be one of the toughest challenges to kind of understand, because what happened during our RSA monitoring and over the last couple of months, we've been having some conversations with RSA. They've changed the definition of what's considered a significant disability, or category 3. And so we're working with our state partners to understand what that means, because it would be a larger population of individuals now that would qualify based on the new definition that was provided to us. And so that is going to be one that I wish I could say this is what it's going to be, but because we have that change in definition, that it's going to be one that it's probably going to be open them up, see what happens. And then as we start serving, if things get to be where we're projecting out, we may have to come back and have a conversation. And I wish I had a better answer, but it's just tough with that new definition for category 3.
So looking at that, and what is the barrier for you to be able to open it up, is what I would say. So is it staff? Is it, what are the issues that are in the way of
So it's two parts. We made the strategic decision because what was happening before Jonathan and I assume our roles is we would hold positions open in order to move funding out of personal services into grants and benefits to ensure that we had enough for case services. But what was happening is we weren't backfilling our counselor positions, which resulted in longer wait times for our staff. So we made the decision to basically say, you guys, we have to have a base budget for our counselors to make sure that we have that money. So what we did is we recalibrated, and that's why where that 40 positions is coming from is we recalibrated to make sure that we're always going to have enough to fund 155 counselors. So number one, my hope is over this month and next month, we can get those counselors in. That's number one. Once we get those counselors in, the second part is a sustained grants and benefits budget. But again, because we made the calculated decision to move money into personnel to get our staff trained to be able to work on these long wait times to get individuals served, that is going to be the second part. And until we get these counselors in to know what's remaining, that's going to be one that's like you said, that's the biggest barrier for me is, can we get the counselors in to make sure that we can eliminate the long wait line, which we think we can. And then the second one is once we get these applications processed quicker, it's going to result in a higher spend category. And we would know that, going into the July timeframe, but by then session will be closed and we'll have to wait. And so we were trying to project out ahead of time to be able to know. So even though the numbers is showing 2021, we're using 2019 as the baseline to say, we will get back here. And so that's what we're using. So it's a tough question and it's a really good question. But my hope is the two things that's kind of keeping me up at night is the number of counselors to get that backfill, get our clients served. And number two, a sustained grants and benefits to be able to push out for our clients to be able to serve them.
So like many of our agencies, especially who deliver services, it's that workforce challenge that is really big. Are you having people interested in applying, and at this point you can't hire them?
So so in May, we had one of our largest, I think that was the first time that GVRA hired counselors in 2 years. So that was very interesting. And so during that time, we actually had 60 applicants that applied, and we hired about 20 individuals during that first go around. And so we do see interest. We do have a relationship with RSA for our RSA grants. We have a lot of students that are still seeking opportunities to be counselors, to be CRCs. And so the individuals are out there. The issue, to be honest with you, is that our business model competes with our local school systems and competes with special education teachers. And so the same people that we're recruiting is also, we train them up and then they potentially can go work in the local school district. So for example, I think it's obvious Georgia has 159 counties, 180 school districts. And so every single one of those school districts have a transition counselor. That transition counselor works closely with VR. So when you have 180 school systems that's focusing on their school system and focusing on their clients and their potentially eligible students, sometimes it's a competition. So we can get them in, we can get them trained, and at that 2-year mark or 1.5 year mark, if they develop a really good relationship with that school that they're working with, they get pulled. I'm happy because that creates an opportunity for us to hopefully to have a really good relationship with that school system. They understand our business model and it helps us serve those students. But you're right, we're competing against the same entities we're working with. And our local school systems have a little bit more capacity than we have being a statewide entity, but having to work with all those school systems and the students there. For example, we have 98,000 potentially eligible students that are out there that qualify for our services, 98,000. And we're serving about 10,000 of those students because it goes back to what you're saying is we get people in, but they're being pulled the minute we get them trained, and which is a good thing.
Okay, Representative Butner.
Thank you. When you were talking about releasing some of the people that were in the different categories, there are words that are used for either closing the case or rehabilitated or released? Are those just all interchangeable and mean the same thing, or do they have different meanings, and what do they mean?
So they have different meanings in it. And so when I meant release, what I meant was when individuals are placed in a priority category, their file is being held. So they've gone through the process, they're ready for VR services, but we're waiting for money to be available and capacity to serve those individuals. So when I meant the word release, the only thing that I was basically saying is they're pulled off of the priority category. When you talk about closing, so when they are pulled off the priority category, an IPE is pretty much developed and they go through the VR process. Once they go through the VR process, we evaluate what their barriers are. We get them job ready. They work with our providers, obtain the skill sets that are needed to go into the workforce. We try to work with them to get them a job because that's the purpose of the program. And after a certain period of time, it's a certain period of time, we have to close that case after multiple contacts. And so when we close the case, that's when we basically the case is closed. We're no longer working with that individual, but then that closed category has multiple determinations in that category. It could be closed successfully. And closed successfully is what we're trying to do, get people employed, or it could be closed other. We're seeing that could be where the individual did not attain a job. There could be other mitigating circumstances. So the terms are different, and release is not necessarily a VR term. I think closed is probably the term that we're more looking at is when we're dealing with a case. So my apologies on that.
Okay. Representative Hogan.
Thank you,
Chairman
Madam
Hogan, I'm
Chair.
sorry.
Could you describe what services are under vocational rehab?
Yes, sir.
Just what are services?
So services could be assistant work technology where individuals, let's just say they need a screen reader. So JAWS is a program that allows individuals that need a screen reader to help. If individuals need a van modification where they come to us, they can get to work, but they need some assistance with their van, we can actually modify vans. Those are the most expensive. I think all the ones I've seen in the last analysis could be up to $150,000. It could be what we call pre-employment transition services, and that's typically with our youth and school students. It could be job exploration. It could be resume writing. It could be, mental health. It could be a range of services that we're offering for individuals. Anything that could potentially be a barrier, we try to get that barrier out of the way. And so if that barrier is there, there are potential services that we offer. So there's a plethora, and I can see you kind of those categories, but there's a lot of ways that we can get services to individuals. But the biggest ones we're seeing is supported employment. And that's when an individual gets a job and they need some additional assistance throughout to maintain that employment. And supported employment could be a number of things, again, that an individual may be coming across in their daily work environment that we have to provide some supports on to make sure that they maintain that employment.
Madam Chair, college tuition, do you do that anymore?
So we do, so they have to be a VR client and it has to meet their career goal. And so we do have cases, and we have quite a few students that we do support and we do pay for education, or even adults. If adults come in and they basically say, I want to get my bachelor's in, I want to be a teacher. And they come in and we evaluate and we say, you know what, that's a really good goal. What are those barriers? We help them eliminate those barriers. If a school, we work with them with that particular school and we pay for those services. I think maybe your question there that you're asking is we did stop tuition with our Ssdi program. And that was one of the ones where we had an audit finding of how that program is operated. And so we've been working with our Ssdi partners to provide funding, because they do offer the services at those institutions that would qualify for your average VR service. So we do still pay our Ssdi programs for services, but it's not in the form of tuition.
Thank you.
Do you have any others that have come up? Okay, so I know you probably won't have this number for today, but since we have some time between now and January when we come back,
Okay.
want to ask you to think about how many staff members and what type of funding across the agency you would need to really reach that capacity and fully open all of the priority categories. I think we need that goal
Okay.
to shoot for. And so I'd just like to know.
Okay.
And I know it might be large, but I know you're a numbers fella. So I know you can do that. So
Is
I'm
it
giving-
okay if I phase it in? I'm going back to my OPB days where when I see a big number, I'm saying, what's the likelihood of you being able to hire that many people or perform those services? So we'll definitely work on it.
You can be real and reasonable, but you can also let us know exactly really what it is that we need to reach for and really
Yes, ma'am.
strive for.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, and along that, I would say that, you know, I've heard from some of our community providers that are in a pretty big level of frustration, I would say right now, that they are not getting referrals
Mhm.
and they want them and they're ready for them.
Mhm.
And so that would be my other question to you that may not come today, but we can talk about this later too, away from here. To really figure out what can we do to help those providers who have some of the job opportunities and are really quite hungry for those placements right now and to help. So some ways together we can really improve the outcomes and the numbers on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, and our providers have been, it started off a little shaky there, but, we've been working and they've been honest with me that that's been one of their concerns. And I've been trying to let them know what we're doing. But, I must admit, it is tough. You saw the numbers for 2021. What we've tried to be transparent and let them know that, we're trying to get out. We started on Wednesday doing a virtual VR. So at 12 o'clock and at 7 o'clock at night or 6:30 at night, we're asking our potential clients and individuals that are seeking VR services or don't know anything about VR to log in at 12 o'clock. If you're at work and you have 30 minutes for your lunch break, is only 30 minutes. And it's actually an orientation of how do you get through the VR process a little bit quicker. And so we're trying to educate and we're trying to work to make sure our clients have the documentation that's needed. And I think, I can do a better job. And we're kind of working right now with that website to try to figure out what are some of the things that we just are asking just to ask that we can eliminate? Because I must admit, I got a little overwhelmed when I started to ask the team, what is all required for us to do an application and completion? And when I saw it, I took a deep breath myself and basically said, yeah, if I'm on the opposite side trying to go through the VR services, it can appear that we're trying to not serve. And so those are the things that we're working on and our providers have mentioned it. And I'll give some examples of things that we can do to help and then provide you that information as well. But if the providers are listening, I want them to know that we understand, I understand, we're doing our best, but it goes back to the numbers that you're asking. If we can get bodies that can help us get through the application process, as well as doing that IPE, that's where the money hits the road. And right now the feds gives us 60 days for the application, 90 days for the IPE. But again, I always say if somebody walks in and they said, come back in 150 days, you're going to look the other way and look for services someplace else. And that does impact our providers. So I do know we have to do a better job to try to, how do we streamline that and get that 60 days down and get that 90 days down? So I'll get you that information.
Well, we need to work on it. And I know there are restraints that are placed on you about, limitations. So I'm asking you to think, if you were able to do that, what would it be? Just so that we have that for a reference and
Yes, ma'am.
to work towards in some big ways. Let me see, I think we have another member here, Representative Buckner.
I'm sorry to keep
No, it's
asking
okay.
so many questions, but it just popped in my mind. With the disability adjudication, do you get federal monies for that?
Yes, ma'am. That is a $70 million program. So it's a $70 million program. We have to give them our projections and they give you what you need and then they take what you don't need. And so we do get federal funds. I think one of the interesting things about the Disability Adjudication Services program is under VR, we actually get money for individuals that may be receiving Social Security benefits if we put them back to work. So if we put them to work as an employer network type situation, we actually, the SSA gives us a portion of the funds that were saved because we were able to put those individuals back to work. And so we do get funding, I guess, from SSA in two different forms. But when you're talking specifically about SSI and SSDI determinations and disability adjudication services, you're right. That's about a $70 million program. It's fully federally funded, and they cover workload adjustments as well.
Just as a follow-up, I don't know how to ask this. It may be more of a, it's everywhere I go, I see help wanted signs. So it seems like we are in a environment where there are a lot of job opportunities. And I just feel like that if we aren't getting the clients into the vocational rehab program to train them and get them ready and take advantage of this plethora of jobs that are out there that might be good jobs for them, that it's a missed opportunity. And I really worry about that.
And I worry about that. I think one of the things we're trying to push this out fairly quickly, and this happened based on coming out of the stakeholder summit, hearing some of the feedback, trying to figure out how do we make it better. And you'll see on this slide where we talk about the providers, we're trying to leverage our providers. So we're trying to do twofold because we can't get the referrals, but we know we have the individuals that are in VR or in our caseload. So we're asking them to help us find these find our client's job. And so that could be an additional revenue source for our providers to help, even if, you know, they're seeing slow referrals. So it gives us another opportunity there. And then it leverages our providers who's out in the field that knows where those jobs are, that are familiar with our clients and can get them jobs fairly quickly. So that new provider job placement category is going to roll out in January. We're hoping that we can pick up, like you're saying, get our clients served fairly quickly, because that's what we're lacking right now, is that ability to kind of place our clients where they need with providers that have great relationships with employers in the community.
Thank you.
Sorry. I don't see any other questions. I want to thank you. This was a great opportunity for us to pause and sort of try to learn a little bit more and get ready for January when you
Anytime.
come back. And I hope, I mean, I know by then you'll have some more numbers to share with us as well. But in recent times just really learned about some, you know, the true abilities of so many people, and anything we can do in the state of Georgia, I think, to help those who are employable be employed. I want us to work toward that together.
We will. I will definitely get you this. I'm excited. You know, I believe, you know, I can change the world. I always made that statement, but I know sometimes it's not about me changing the world, it's about we, and you have to rely on other people to help you do that. And I think this is one of the most, you know, this is one of the greatest opportunities to be able to help individuals seek that independence. I go back to, you know, my first job as a dishwasher. The first day I went home and asked my parents, could I go to a party? They couldn't say no because I had money for the car, I had money for gas, and that was my first semblance of independence. And I know it was through employment. So I think about that opportunity that was granted and the opportunity that we can provide to other individuals that are seeking that. So we're on the same page.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. Seeing no further questions, we are adjourned.
Thank you so very much.